XRP is the one. But it's not a reserve currency. It's not a world currency. Why? Because it's not a currency. Remember? It's security. It's digital asset collateral. It's the guarantee. You're giving everybody confidence to go ahead and do the transaction because your system makes sure that everything is on the up and up. XRP bridges the gap from the third dimension into the fifth dimension. And this is where all of the money, our money, is going to reside. If you want to put some in your local bank or credit union, you'll be able to do it. You won't be able to put a lot in there. It's going to put enough to pay your bills if you have any bills. But 99.9% of it's going to sit on the XRP ledger, QFS, under QFS, in the fifth dimension. Nice and safe. See, the banks don't get to touch this money anymore. Even the money that you would put into a bank or a credit union going forward for a short period of time till you realize it's pointless. They can't do anything with it. They can't claim it as theirs like they do now. And this is where the whole issue pops up about Basel III, Basel IV. They raised the security requirements for banks going forward. So they have to have the minimum assets, not anybody's money, but their money. Tier 1 banks they operate on their own capital. So if they don't have enough capital to cover your $100,000 deposit coming from the quantum financial system, your quantum access account, when we first get started, they got to go buy some insurance. Who sells the insurance? Or who is the insurance? It's XRP. Now, can they own XRP? No. But what can they do? And this is a graphic I designed over the last week. And I've had this gateway component for, oh my gosh, almost a year. I just didn't know what to do with it. I found out that we've been jumping through Stargates since the early 60s. Now, what does it say? The master key. It's a gateway to the QFS, quantum financial system, 5D, the fifth dimension. Can we access the fifth dimension? No. We can't go there yet. There'll be a time when our resonance allows us to do that. And that happens when we get back to a 13-month, 28-day calendar. And I can't go down that road right now. But all of this is behind or through the gateway. And that's where the XRPL, the XRP ledger, houses all of the funds that are coming to us, that are being mirrored right now, our bank accounts, our ISO 222 compliant digital assets, retirement accounts, no stock portfolios, nothing in a brokerage that isn't a retirement account. It's all being mirrored in real time on the XRPL QFS in the fifth dimension on the other side of the Stargate. That's why when they talk about it being unhackable, that's where it is. The nefarious bankers, even the guy with Ethereum, Buterin, tried to steal the code for XRP. See, the XRPL is ancient technology. It's over 588 million years old. It was used in prior civilization. It came into a situation just like us. They used it for maybe 25 to 30 years. And after that, there was no more need for currency. They had replicators. They could create whatever they needed. That's the road we're on, people. And I know it sounds like science fiction. Put yourself in my shoes when the Lord is revealing this. And he's giving me visions and I'm seeing it operating. And I'm asking and praising and thanking him to have an awareness of it. But I don't want to know everything. Because I've asked to know everything. about certain things. And he hasn't held back one piece of information. We've broken the codes on Mind Calendar, 819 days. How it's calculated, what it does, what it means. So in this fifth dimension realm, we have unhackable security. We don't even need internet. We're not using this crappy virus, backdoor, third dimension internet because it's too darn slow. That's why XRP is a 60-cent token. It has nothing to do with market cap. Market cap doesn't apply to something that's 100% minted up front, or something like XRP, which nobody can own, or the purpose and plan for XRP. So you don't have to buy into that lie anymore. You just put that down. But you're gonna start to see where the FUD has brought in the fear and the doubt to keep people off kilter. They started building the XRP after David Schwartz came over from Bitcoin. David Schwartz was part of the four-man Satoshi group. There was no Satoshi Nakamoto. There wasn't somebody called Satoshi Nakamoto. It was four men. It was Hal Finney, who just 10 years ago passed away. It was Larry Page. So Hal Finney was the primary programmer. Larry Page was the assistant programmer. There was David Schwartz. He brought the NSA and DARPA, CIA. And then Elon 1.0, he brought the government money to fund it because it was all about moving dark money, illegal money, nefarious money, evil money, back and forth for what they were doing. Child trafficking, adrenochrome, organ harvesting, all of that evil crap. So if you're in Bitcoin, guess what? You're wearing that moniker right now. So it's like being in the gang without knowing you're in the gang. And once you know, you have an obligation to do one of two things. Either you accept evil and you're going to have your day of judgment very, very quick, or you sell it all and get out of it right now. And you run to the Lord and you repent, knowing that you got into that. But I looked at XRP for my brother on a due diligence request. Within 5 minutes, the Lord said, "This is the one, Dave. All in." And I haven't looked back. So you need to be aware if you hold that, what you hold, because it's not going through. It's not going into the new economy. So Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the other 99.5%, they're all just going to shut down when the markets shut down. Markets are going to go away. We're not going to have stock markets anymore. We're not going to have a fiat. We're not going to have Forex market anymore because all currencies are par 1-to-1, gold-backed, gold asset-backed. But these are the things you need to be prepared for because they're coming fast. This all happens because we've gotten rid of evil. It has limitless transaction speed. Transaction speed is what has kept the price for XRP where it is. And I've got countless situations where I pointed that out. I've done it with slides. I've done it with posts. I've done it with thumbnails. All you need to know is it can't get the transaction speed it needs on the corrupt 3D internet. But once it goes into the 5D realm, there's no limit. The governor comes off. So if we need to produce 100 quadrillion transactions per second, it's done automatically. And in October of 2022, 3 men won the Nobel Peace Prize, having shown that Einstein's theory of relativity equals mc squared, the E, the energy. Get it? E, the energy was changed. The fifth dimension already knew what the third dimension needed. How's that possible? How does God know what you need before you ask? He says it in the Bible. He has already prepared and laid up everything that each one of us needs now and going forward. But we don't see the manifestation until we acknowledge him as the creator, as our Father. So there's that big E. You're going to see how that changes. And there's unbounded storage. They took the QFS, 5D, in the fifth dimension, and they went back in time into the third dimension, all the way back to the 1700s, and they picked up and recorded all of the banking transactions to the 1700s. There isn't anything that they don't have. Hello? And every single transaction worldwide on the QFS going through the XRP ledger with XRP opening the gateway so the transactions can flow back up from the third dimension through the gateway into the fifth dimension. There's no need to worry about storage. It's limitless. It's unbounded. It's like whatever it needs to be, it is. Isn't that crazy? I know it might be hard to kind of get your head around it. But see, that's because they've dumbed us all down. They've told us that $1 million is, oh boy, you're a millionaire. Do you see what's coming? That'll be pocket change on your Q phone. Okay, so come back and look at this. This is the flow, the electricity. You notice here it's kind of red and a little bit of purple, some white, and then it comes through, and at the other side, it's now looking like the rainbow. But through that gateway, it is the other side. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Brad Garlinghouse has always told us it's all about the exchange of value. Remember he talked about it's the internet of value. We want to be able to complete a transaction just like an email, sending an email. He has been dropping so many hints and so many clues. And I've been seeing him, and he's been dropping stuff to confirm stuff that I'm posting on. So what is the exchange of value? It's just a transaction or an interaction between two or more parties that have something of value that they want to transfer. It's goods, it's services, it's money, it's information. It can be intangible benefits like trust or goodwill. Every single transaction in the world, every single second of the day, is going to flow through that gateway. It's all going to be tabulated and rounded up by the 7 dwarfs. It's all going to go up to Starlink. Starlink's going to send it to the XRPL in the third dimension, and then XRP opens up the gateway. It goes right into the fifth dimension. So exchange of value is extremely important. It has to do with payments. But see, you gotta understand the meaning of the words. Decentralized networks, blockchain, digital assets. Exchange of value between two or more parties. Okay? XRP is the master key for the XRP ledger. Okay, again, I said nobody talks about the ledger. It's the 800-pound gorilla in the room. XRP has been stuck at about 62.5 cents. If it ever breaks above it, it comes right back down. And it's all tied to transaction speed. It's in some of the videos. So XRP is the first 3 letters of XRPL for a specific reason. The master key opens the gateway to the XRPL, the QFS in the third dimension, and the fifth dimension. Once it opens the ledger, both the third dimension and the fifth dimension communicate simultaneously. On the third dimension, it consolidates and reports all 3D activity to Starlink. Okay? Liquidity is the security and guarantee. So isn't that kind of what our Federal Reserve did when the US dollar was considered the world reserve currency? They didn't have anything to use to pay out if there was a disaster other than printing more money. So that's how they made their guarantee. But they didn't have the money. They just printed it. The QFS has gold and other precious metals and artifacts. I mean, they have enough gold on there right now. It's assayed, certified, and blockchain identified on the XRPL ledger in the fifth dimension where it can't be touched, to provide all of the security and guarantee through XRP for all transactions on the ledger, like a car purchase. The security and guarantee comes because XRP is backed. It's given a value. And you're going to see what that value is. And most of you already know what I've already proven using base 10 math, proved it, to make sure both sides of the transaction can't be damaged. If I'm the buyer, I can't be damaged. The seller can't be damaged. So that's what XRP does. It provides the security and the guarantee as a digital asset collateral. And it can do that because it's the master key and opens up the gateway. The L stands for ledger. And what does a ledger do? If you're familiar with accounting, it's just it's a accounting and record keeping system used to report, record, and store. So that's what has to happen. Every single transaction, every single second of the day around the world has to be put onto the XRP ledger into the fifth dimensions system, the storage, to report, record, and store. And I remember the Lord told me this. It's like, I'm trying to figure out what this thing is out there and what it's going to do. And then the Lord gives me the revelation, Dave, it's to report, it's to record, and it's to store. None of this is done in our third dimension realm. Now, there's going to be servers and things like that XLM uses. Now, you can go watch the movie Contact with Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey, and it's the story of XRP and XLM. In 5D, it manages the flow of all worldwide liquidity needs 24/7, 365 days a year. There will be nothing you cannot do on your Q phone or your Q laptop 24 hours a day. Your money will move from your quantum access account on the QFS, which already exists. So don't buy into these scammers out there trying to tell you, oh, you got to open up your QFS account. Have you opened up your QFS account? I can help you do it. Send over your XRP. And they steal it. Did they really steal it? If that happens to you, you need to put together a packet, send it over to David Schwartz or contact Clinton Donnelly. Because guess what? Remember I told you? It retains the ownership, prior ownership records. Now, if they're doing it to hold it, chances are it's coming back. I personally believe God will make good on it in other ways. So no fear, okay? This is right from Brad Garlinghouse. Ripple means exchange of value. Nobody else in the world offers exchange of value. This is an interview we did on January 10th, 2021. That means there is no face-to-face competition for Ripple and probably will never be. Because why? The main advantage that Ripple has and nobody else has is XRP. How does the CEO of a company make that kind of a statement? Because he knows. But it literally went on to say that there's no peer on earth that does what XRP does. There is no peer on earth. That means XLM is not a peer. It can't do what XRP does. XRP is the one. But it's not a reserve currency. It's not a world currency. Why? Because it's not a currency. Remember? It's security. It's digital asset collateral. It's the guarantee. It's like being Lloyd's of London. You're giving everybody confidence to go ahead and do the transaction because your system makes sure that everything is on the up and up. XRP bridges the gap from the third dimension into the fifth dimension. And this is where all of the money, our money, is going to reside. If you want to put some in your local bank or credit union, you'll be able to do it. You won't be able to put a lot in there. It's going to put enough to pay your bills if you have any bills. But 99.9% of it's going to sit on the XRP ledger QFS, under QFS, in the fifth dimension. Nice and safe. See, the banks don't get to touch this money anymore. Even the money that you would put into a bank or a credit union going forward for a short period of time till you realize it's pointless. They can't do anything with it. They can't claim it as theirs like they do now. And this is where the whole issue pops up about Basel III, Basel IV. They raise the security requirements for banks going forward. So they have to have the minimum assets, not anybody's money, but their money. Tier 1 banks they operate on their own capital. So if they don't have enough capital to cover your $100,000 deposit coming from the quantum financial system, your quantum access account, when we first get started, they got to go buy some insurance. Who is the insurance? It's XRP. Now, can they own XRP? No. But what can they do? They can purchase its collateral power, purchase its guarantee, purchase its security. That's not for us to benefit from. That's going to happen for the U.S. Treasury Department. Fantastic little tidbits that Brad has thrown out there over the years. Orders of magnitude, dozens. This was during a CNBC interview that he did back in June of 2018. What is order of magnitude? The only people I've ever heard use order of magnitude, Brad Garlinghouse, and then on a TV series called Outer Banks, go to season 3, episode 1. It just screams XRP in it. But see, Brad added another word, dozens. Who says? He asked, if you actually read the interview, and again, I couldn't put it all in here. He asked him this question about the future of XRP, and Brad says, orders of magnitude, dozens. It was like, where did that come from? Totally out of the blue. Made no sense in how he responded. But what was he doing? I was working on the valuation. I had talked about base 10 math, orders of magnitude. Generally, the order of magnitude of a number is the smallest power of 10 used to represent the number. Power of 10, that's base 10 math. That's how I proved the valuation for XRP and for the quantum financial system in the fifth dimension. So this is what Brad says. And it all comes back to if we're solving a real problem for real customers. There's so many different examples. This is supposed to be the word in this space. Excuse me for the typo. I think he was referencing space. Why? Fifth dimension, orders of magnitude. And then he goes on to say, there's ICOs where I don't really understand the problem the token is solving. Those are ones where I'm very skeptical about what the future of that value looks like. You notice how fast they dropped the ICO for Ripple? Think about that. Lord told me it wasn't going to happen. Just like the relisting wasn't going to happen for a long, long time. Ripple began to buy their own XRP. They turned around and purchased back all of the Ripple stock that they gave the employees with XRP. Now, no one talks about that. And I actually did an article on that, calculated the value. So they don't have any worries. They have no worries at all. Matter of fact, would you like to do an ICO where they were getting $45 to $50 per share? Or would you rather have the valuation you're going to see come up for one XRP, which is fantastic? So Brad's not talking about how institutions are going to buy and utilize XRP. No, they're not going to buy or utilize XRP as XRP. The only way they would utilize what XRP can do, what it can offer, but not the token, not the coin, not the digital asset. Nobody can own it. It's all being acquired in a buyback. Ripple's going to be the fiduciary. I'm kind of letting the cat out of the bag again. They're the most appropriate party to do that. They've got David Schwartz. He's a genius. He's the only one that Space Force could work with to be able to put together what needed to be done, having worked on Bitcoin coding. But it's about the coverage of the money. How do you cover it? I remember telling Jimmy this. Jimmy, this is insurance. It's like having insurance. Tokenization is just another way of saying insurance in case something happens. But Brad says, Brad's use of the orders of magnitude, they identify base 10 number, and the way he presented it with dozens, it falls between, actually this is supposed to be a 2. I apologize for that. Man, I had some problems trying to get this stuff in. So this should be 10 to the 12th. This should be 10 to the 24th. And the mean value of the two is 10 to the 17th, which is $1 million. Sorry about that. Let's talk about David Schwartz, the genius, the man. He can't do a lot of talking, but he said some things back in 2017. And I believe he said these things because nobody was listening. Nobody was picking up what he was putting down. People that think at that level get to the point when people aren't understanding what they're trying to secretly share, that they realize that unless they just tell them, they're not going to get it. Now, I've had people say that about some of the stuff that I've done. Dave, you got to bring it down. You got to do it like you're talking to an 8th grader. And this is my 8th grade slideshow, by the way. It went through a 5-hour review, and you wouldn't believe what got kicked out. Stuff that I thought was great. No, too complicated, Dave. They're not going to get it. They're not going to get it. So from what we've learned, David said XRP at $1 million is better than XRP at $1. I mean, it's like a Chinese fortune cookie. It is what it is. A couple things that I've put together. Again, not just stuff from me. We can calculate it only 3 ways. So we got 2 things that David did. Then Vincent Kennedy did something. You'll see that. And then you'll see what I did. Okay, here's what David said. If XRP costs $1 million, they'd need one XRP that costs $1 million. That's the sum of what he said. It can't be dirt cheap. That doesn't make any sense. See, here he is. He's the genius, and he's getting frustrated because people aren't getting it. If XRP costs $1, they'd need 1 million XRP. which would cost $1 million. If XRP costs $1 million, they'd need one XRP, which would cost $1 million. See, he's having to help people understand there's like economies of scale here. There's a reason for XRP having a value of $1 million and not $1, not 10 cents, not $10,000. Okay. Jimmy Valley's video was the first video I saw, him and James Rule. And Jimmy said, XRP was designed to carry a value between 10 and 35,000 to carry a value. Okay. Well, we've gone way beyond that because now we're understanding we're going into the quantum realm. We've got all this money that's coming. Everybody's got tens, if not hundreds of millions and billions. Currency exchanges, Zim bond redemptions, all the money that was stolen on your social security card, your birth certificate, all the bonds that were traded on Wall Street behind our back. Every way they could make money on us as a corporation. But he's laying it all out right here. Now, see, I didn't come in here knowing all this stuff. I got the revelation from the Lord. I started to do the work. And then this stuff popped up later to confirm. So it's kind of like David was already saying it. I didn't know he said it. I did the math that proved what he said was true. So it's like I vetted David's comments to prove them, not just, hey, it's going to be $1 million, like everybody out there who spouts out some number about XRP's price. You'll notice there's nothing to back it. I've done white papers. I've done proofs. I've shown the math. I've used the greatest math minds in the world. Here's the second thing he said December 17th. If banks were to adopt XRP, which means they have to purchase XRP, would they not want to keep the market price of XRP low? See, what he's saying is, I'm going to give you an example as XRP as a security. Because what did the banks do in those situations? They came in and they worked with the SEC, which was basically the mob, and what they did in the past. They would strong arm the company, tell them if they wanted to play in their field on Wall Street, they had to give them 50% of the equity. So we saw this with all the big companies, Intel, Microsoft, Facebook, you name it. When they came out, their prices took off and then they tanked. And it was the analysts from the banks that came out and said, oh no, looks like they're not going to make it. And the price got lower and lower and lower. I think Facebook came out at 90 and got down to 13 and they were already digging the grave. And then all of a sudden, it just turned and went straight up. And then the banks are right there with their analysts talking about where it's going, where it's going. So when it took the dive, they all jumped in, got their best clients in. The nefarious people had more money to pay for their stuff, and that was their program. But see, right here, he's dissecting it and saying, okay, let's treat it like a security. Wouldn't they want it to be low, right? Because they're going to hold it, and they're going to wait for it to go up over time. And then look what he drops. If XRP is finite, right? All of it was minted at one time on May 26th of 2012. Jed McCaleb got the code from Arthur Brito and minted all 100 billion XRP tokens onto the XRP ledger. One and done. So that's what he's saying when he says finite. It can't be mined. And he's saying, wouldn't that hinder Main Street from wanting it? It's kind of like, well, why did they want stocks? Well, because when they ran the price up, what could they do? Stock split. I mean, all of them, Intel, Microsoft, Cisco, all of them. I mean, we just had the 10-for-1 split with NVIDIA. You know, it gets up to $700, you split it to $100, and then boom, it goes right back up. What he's saying is, if the banks were going to purchase it, they'd want it low, right? Because that's what banks do. They buy low. But wait a minute. What if it's finite? What if you can't do anything with it? You can't split it. You can't make any more. Then who's going to want it? See? So David himself here, and this revelation is just coming now as we're talking through this, iron sharpens iron. He's basically saying it's not a security. They can't purchase it. We're not talking about Main Street adoption because it's not a security. It's security. And then he goes on to say, well, no, they don't want it. He says the price of the XRP you need to make a $1 million payment will always be at least $1 million. Wait a minute, sounds like Brad Garlinghouse. Orders of magnitude, dozens. He's talking about banks. He's talking about market price. He's talking about mainstream adoption. And then he turns around and says, no. It's almost like he caught himself and said, wait a minute, I've said too much. Now I need to tell him what I really wanted to tell him. So he tells the truth, but it doesn't look like the truth, right? And then he's giving us the meat and potatoes. The price of XRP you need to make a $1 million payment will always be at least $1 million. We can't do that with XRP at $1. He just told us that in the prior one. Oops. He said, if it costs $1 million, XRP has to be $1 million. It's like you can see him. He's going through this thought process. It's November. Wait a minute. Now let me tell you the truth, guys. See if anybody picks it up. The price of XRP you need to make $1 million payment will always. I mean, that's a guarantee right there. That's a guarantee. And what is XRP? Security and guarantee. So he's giving us the guarantee. It's $1 million. And then he comes in and he makes this statement. The truth is precisely the opposite. Not talking about this truth. He's talking about this truth. The banks aren't going to adopt Ripple. See, he says adopt Ripple. Ripple has nothing to do with XRP. From a purchasing standpoint, you don't get anything of Ripple when you buy XRP. They're just the fiduciary. So you really got to tear this stuff down and analyze it forensically as to what are they saying. It's exactly what I did. Higher prices tend to correlate with higher liquidity, which means cheaper payments. He's not talking about the money being cheaper. He's talking about the ability to make the payment is less strenuous. If XRP is $1 million, you just use one token. But if it's $1, you got to use 1 million of them. That's going to be a much more expensive way to pay going into the quantum realm. Whoa. And the Lord told me, he says, Dave, remember what David said. David made the comment one time. He said this. He said, if it ever becomes necessary to remove the cost of a transaction with XRP, we just want to let everybody know we're going to increase the transactions per minute or per second. So instead of doing 1,500 a second, we're going to go ahead and push that up to 34 to 3,800. I remember when I heard that, I was like, wait a minute. Did somebody just look behind the curtain and see the knob? No one had ever said that you could increase the transaction speed. Well, he wasn't doing it for the third dimension realm. He was basically confirming what I had already proven, that transaction speed was related to the price for XRP at $1 million and at the current, at that time, I think it was 42.6 or 42.65 cents. So David's kind of saying the same thing, but it's all running on free energy. See, there's only a cost right now because Ripple has to pay the bills of being a fiduciary. But once the EBS goes off and we go into the quantum realm, there's no need to recoup that anymore. Why? Because they're going to be participating in the buyback with the 4.6 billion they have. Okay, so here's what Vincent Kennedy put out there. Now, I knew this already because it was all part of the stuff that I do. And I calculate all this stuff. But Vincent put out there, XRP is measured precisely to the nearest 0.000001 XRP, called a drop. The Ripple APIs require all XRP amounts to be specified in drops of XRP. Now, if you didn't know this, this is really key. This will kind of bring things into perspective for you. 1 XRP is represented as 1 million drops, meaning think of it as a pi. Oh, pi, 3.14. 159. 1 XRP can be divided into 1 million pieces. Now, going forward, everybody having these tens of millions of billions of trillions of dollars restored from everything that was stolen, going all the way back to Adam, and the money has already been put up in gold from the Asian elders, the minimum transaction is $1. $1. See, that's why David back here was talking about XRP at $1. So again, remember, he's a genius. He's thinking without saying. He's thinking, I already know that there is 1 million drops in one XRP. So if each drop costs $1, then what is the price for XRP? $1 million. I mean, any way you slice it, you keep coming back to the same conclusion. But you have to dissect it. You have to forensically lay it out on the table. You got to put pencil to paper. You got to do the spreadsheets. You got to look at all this. And I did all this in proofing my number because I wasn't trying to determine a price for XRP. And you're going to see exactly how I approached it. Okay. So this is how it calculates. Million drops times $1 equals $1 million for XRP. And you can read through this, and this is where I point out what for me was a play on words, but I know Judge Torres already knew this. But XRP is the worldwide liquidity provider. See, this is not a world bank. This is not a world currency. We have the currency. We're the banks in the new system. Okay? We're seeing XRP in its true light now. It's out of the sandbox. We can look at it, we can touch it, we can hold it, we can understand what it's there to do. Okay? It's the worldwide liquidity provider. It opens up the gateway to let the liquidity flow. So, does the money actually move? It moves between the parties, between the two parties. Does XRP put any money up? No. Does XRP, and I want to be careful how I say this, does XRP bring value to the table? And it's a matter of your perspective. If you understand that it's security, it's a provider of liquidity and a guarantor of limitless security for all transactions between buyers and sellers on the ledger. The value, it looks at the fact that there's 1 million pieces to one XRP. So a minimum transaction will be $1. There'll be 1 million $1 transactions equated to the valuation of XRP as the master key and the worldwide liquidity provider and guarantor of limitless security for all transactions. Plain and simple. 8th grade math. Now let's talk about what I've done. My approach was, and I was trained by a mathematical genius who trained all the Chicago floor traders, what's called perfect math or exact, perfect, proportional, harmonic, balanced algorithm. That's just a big way to say take 100, divide it by 8, break everything into 1/8. That's base 10 math, guys, 8th grade. I had to use a top-down approach. Thank goodness we already knew, and we had a finite number of minted XRP, 100 billion. Now see, if we didn't have that number, and this was a minted token, we could never have come up with this. Why? Because it would change. And they used the halving of Bitcoin, but all the money really isn't all the money. It's about coming to an understanding of how much digital asset collateral is needed. How much insurance do we need? Oh my gosh. We better figure out how much insurance we need before we get started, because we have to have insurance in case something happens. Well, that's what happens in the quantum realm. I literally had to sit down and figure out what the minimum amount would be as digital asset collateral, divide it by the total minted XRP to arrive at the value that XRP would have as the big E, as the master key, as the universal asset, the 100% gold-backed digital asset collateral. How much was it? For some reason, $1 million was beyond imagination for people for XRP. The plan and purpose for XRP, the XRPL, which is the ledger, and how it all works and functions in our new quantum financial system. And just how easy it is to calculate this, because we know this number right here. With this one number right here, when we divide it into this number, it gives us the value for this. So again, what is the digital asset collateral? And this is the phrase I just coined. Just like when I use the term buyback, I'm the first one to use digital asset collateral, digital asset reserve collateral. It's the value necessary to provide the worldwide markets with sufficient liquidity with XRP as the digital asset collateral for unlimited security guarantee. Meaning, bring us your $100 trillion transaction. We got you covered. See, we could never have done this as a country without God having stored up all the gold and given the Asian elders access to an unending river of gold that replenishes itself. I was one of the first people to disclose that. And that's also true with gasoline or oil too. So the cost of gasoline is going to go down to 35 cents a gallon. It's all about the collateral. XRP is security, not a security. This is one of the 3 pieces of paperwork. The Federal Reserve System took out a loan, Pentagon, Washington, North American Water and Power Alliance. How'd they collateralize this? They used every American as collateral in all the real estate. And why did they do that? Because we were considered chattel. That's why our Social Security card is all in caps. Our birth certificate, all in caps. So what did they do with it? They used it to build all their underground dump tunnels, where they stored 150 years worth of food in them. They had movie theaters, shopping malls. And this is where all the elites were going to go or I should say, when they were killing all of us off. But as long as they played the game, they got a ticket to the tunnel. I don't even want to go there yet. They borrowed $14.3 quadrillion. That in itself right there, when you add it to this, took the valuation, or let's just say the guarantee security component for XRP to $160,000. Now, when we calculate everything else, and I included Nasara, I included all kinds of different things in there, the buyback, all the derivatives that were off balance sheet, unfunded pension plans, I came to a number of about 29 quadrillion. Then I discovered this. According to the Office of International Treasury Control, over-the-counter derivatives market is worth about 3.3 quadrillion. During the Clinton years, the fractionalized banking, used a 1 to 10 ratio, which meant for every dollar in the bank, they could loan 10. Well, they increased that. For every dollar, they could loan 100. Well, what happened? They literally used it to create and package and ledger derivatives of $100 quadrillion. I just got my hands on this the other day. I've never seen this before in my life prior to having discovered it. No one ever mentioned it. They didn't tell us about it. Now, I do know that they had received so much gold from the Asian elders, the Committee of 300, one Switzerland bank, that their number, not counting the gold that they had, was 2 with 206 zeros after it. But it all had to be kept off the balance sheet. See? So they had a completely different financial system that they were operating under that they couldn't tell us about. They wouldn't tell us about. So I say XRP has a value that's determined by taking the circulating global liquidity reserve of 100 quadrillion, dividing it by the total minted XRP of 100 billion, and that equals XRP as the master key, as the provider of worldwide liquidity security as a guarantor, to be able to function on a second-by-second basis with all of the money that's coming into the system that's there right now. The U.S. received 1 followed by 45 zeros in gold from the Asian elders, and it's all covered. Everything's covered. They got 1 quattrodecillion, and that's 1 followed by 45 zeros. Now, see, I couldn't use that. Why? It's too much. Don't need all that much money. I mean, it's nice, but it would just inflate the value of the insurance backing. It's not necessary, at least until 2030. So I discounted it, and then look at the discount. I was like, you come back to the 29.2 quadrillion, which is what I had over on my worksheet. Over here. Right here. So again, math is the universal language, and it does not lie. Always has to tell the truth. So that was the proof from a circulating global liquidity reserve standpoint. See, I didn't start from XRP at $1 million and go backward. If this number had only been $25 quadrillion, then XRP would have been what the equation showed, but it wasn't. So, like I said before, the math supports what David has already said. It supports what we saw Vincent do in that comment, which came from looking at the fact that there were drops. So all the money is really all the collateral. So ATM, global liquidity, 100 quadrillion, total minted 100 billion. We divide 1 by 2, 100 quadrillion divided by 100 billion, and that gives us the value. See, XRP didn't get its value by itself. Like all these other clowns out there, just give it a value. Oh, it's going to be $10,000. Oh, it's going to go here. No, it had a mathematical formula that had to proof itself and then had to substantiate running 86,400 times in a day. Pressure tested it with 100 quadrillion transactions per second with no cost to burn. And you just can't change it. It is what it is. Now, here's something I want to cover, and we're just about done. What I did is I put together just a quick little example of liquidity, okay? This is where people are missing the boat. They have no idea that XRP is to provide liquidity. That's why you can't use market cap. That's why you can't use technical analysis. They don't work. You have to understand what the need is, the global worldwide need for every single individual, 8 billion people. Our population is going to double in 12 and a half years. So I gave you a scale for XRP. We've got most of them down here. What I want you to see is how much collateral it makes. At $10,000, it only makes 1 quadrillion of collateral. At 100,000, it makes 10 quadrillion, where that gives us the coverage. So you can see both of these are like way down here. They don't even get us out of the first realm. So this is failure. Anybody's talking about this? Failure. Failure until you get to 1 quadrillion, $100 quadrillion. It all fails because it can't provide enough liquidity for every second of the day based upon value of transactions for the majority of the nations. Just look through this, okay? Just look through this. But understand that the XRPL, it's a quantum consciousness, and it might be best that we just think of this as artificial intelligence from 100 years in the future. The U.S. Treasury Department would buy back all the XRP, not the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve was pulled under the U.S. Treasury Department in 2020, I think it was April. They've been reduced to a board. All they're there to do going forward is to help maintain compliance for the national sales tax of 14%. They can't make money. They can't print money. Matter of fact, they have to buy back all their old money, and they're going to be given 1 year to do it. And how'd that happen? All the money, isn't it interesting? All the money was confiscated back from every single corrupt company under Executive Orders 13818 and 13848. Everything out of the Vatican, everything out of Buckingham Palace, Switzerland, Jerusalem, tunnels. And I've done videos and I've put out posts marking the tunnels that the Lord showed me. They're going to buy back all the retail tokens. That includes the remaining tokens that were purchased and held by Ripple because they purchased those in the secondary market. They're going to get all the balance of the escrowed tokens. They're going to get all of the tokens that were clawed back from illegal purchases or nefarious people. That's going to total approximately 100 billion, which were minted. But here's the key. No more tokens can ever be minted.